As we discussed about the railroads in their effort to take over tribal land in the last part that's not in the textbook, another thing that's not in the textbook is some of this information. In 1890, Frank Baum, the writer of The Wizard of Oz, begins advocating for basically the total annihilation of tribes. And in that same year, Miccosukee Academy is rebuilt by the Seminoles, and Jones Academy is built by the Choctaws. That same year, 1891, is the year of Wounded Knee. This is a tragedy that, if you look at this picture, it is reminiscent of something that you would see that happened in Germany. And again in 1891, Frank Baum again re-advertises that the remaining Indians should be annihilated. So now you're seeing the foundation of the racism that existed at the time of the Dawes Commission in 1893. Tams Bixby, who's the chairman of the Dawes Commission, at the same time that he is setting up the allotments, he is also setting up another company with the Indian Inspector for Indian Territory, and it's called the Muskogee Title and Trust Company, which was incorporated to basically buy lands that belong to tribes. Robert L. Owen, who is from Virginia, who claims to be part Cherokee, also founds the First National Bank of Muskogee and serves as its president, and he owned and edited the newspaper in Veneta, Oklahoma in 1890. He's also the Five Tribes agent. Wirt Franklin, who's a Dawes clerk, after the Dawes, he will start charging legal fees, and the way that you were paid, that he paid it, was buying land, and as a result he will become a wealthy oil man. The Presbyterian College is built by the Choctaws in 1894. In 1895, they begin complaining, as we talked about in education, that the tribes were not providing education to white children. Now, the reason that this is important is because what the agent is not reporting is that all those tribal schools were built with property that was sold at removal. So the tribes really didn't understand that they were going to be required to provide for public education for the people that were coming into Indian Territory. 1897, something that's not inside the textbook occurs that you can go to the Seminole Nation website and look at, and that is the Seminole burning case. The case involves apparently a white family that was renting land from an Indian. Miss Laird is found raped and killed. They blame Indians because the children say they thought they were Indians that invaded. However, the children were never able to identify who actually did it. And as a result, a mob gets together in Maud. They chain two boys to a tree and burn them at the stake. It became a national sensation. It's not inside the textbook. Chickasaw Nation builds its Capitol building in 1898. Third grade, symbols of Oklahoma history. Should mention the fact that already with the new territory of Oklahoma, they start describing Indians as barbarous, nomadic, ignoring the fact that there was over 324 schools. They start discussing all the things that white people have, which was a farmer plowing, rural having a house, railroad trains, elevators, manufactories, churches, and schools. All these things the five tribes possessed, but the Oklahoma Territory is already claiming that this is the peaceful conquest of the Anglo-Saxon and the decadence of the red race. Robert Williams, who will become the first Chief Justice of the Oklahoma Supreme Court, he will accumulate over 7,000 acres of Choctaw land by lease with option to purchase during this time, during the allotment period. So we mentioned 324 schools. Oil is discovered at Red Fork in Tulsa, and then in 1905 at Glenpool. At this time, Robert L. Owen in 1901 says that he is seeking for the five tribes to be given United States citizenship because he wants to end restrictions over the lands that the tribes own. So it's not for the benefit of the Indians. It's so that way the state court can basically start taking land by taxation. 1903, the famous Lone Wolf versus Hickok is discussed, and specifically what the Kiowa were under Lone Wolf were asserting was that the signing of the agreement was by fraud because of misrepresentations in the terms by the interpreters, and that it was asserted that the agreement should not be held binding upon the tribe because 3/4 of the adult male members had not assented to it. However, it goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court makes a decision and says, oh, yes, tribal treaties have been sacred or sometimes expressed as sacred as the fee of the United States in that same lands. However, they say they attribute plenary powers of Congress over tribal lands. Now, the last episode we talked about railroads were giving free passes to legislators and to judges. So what's fascinating during the Lone Wolf is, and here's a discussion that will be a discussion question, is do you think that the representatives of Congress had the interests of the Indian, or did they have the interests of the railroad? That's a legitimate question. I think that can be asked after the Supreme Court Lone Wolf decision. State of Sequoia attempts in 1905. One of the things that the state of Sequoia complained about was the railroads trying to take over Indian land, and they were trying to protect their citizens. As a matter of fact, they mentioned that the National Committeemen of the Democratic Party belonged to MK&T, and the National Committee for the Republican Party was the attorney for Frisco. And as we move on, another lobbyist, Henry Asp, one of the 12 apostles of the state, is a lobbyist for the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad Company. He's the one that will make Guthrie the capital of the new territory. Standard Oil wants to build their pipeline in 1906 onto the soil. However, the new governor in 1907, Governor Haskell, refuses the pipeline, and he blocks it. However, he allows Prairie Oil and Gas to build the pipeline, which is a subsidiary of Standard Oil that Haskell owns shares in. And that's discussed. He becomes Governor Haskell, the first governor, becomes a very wealthy oilman as a result. So the link between the state and Standard Oil is clearly explored, and in an article by the Outlook called "Do the People Rule in Oklahoma?" And it just discusses the graft. 1907, Senator Owen proposes that all of those Indian homestead that are exempt from taxation, that as a result, all of those tribal school buildings should just be given to the state at cost. So tribal facilities that were built with removal funds from lands from the Trailatiers, which cost thousands of lives, specifically over 11,000, all of those school buildings that were built were given to the state of Oklahoma with no cost to the state.